Hey guys, I am Ellie. I'm one of the financial advisors here at Burst, and I've got my teammates Lucy, Michael, and Stevie Jade here with me today. Hi guys.
Hi,
Hi, Ellie.
Ellie.
G'day, Ali.
Now, today we want to do a quick video for you just to give you a little bit of context around a big discussion point in the news over the last couple of weeks around changes to superannuation. We thought it was worth chatting about this with you and just giving you a little bit more context around these changes and also the evolution of super over time. Super is worth about $3.2 trillion today. So it's a pretty significant amount of wealth that we have as a country. And Treasury analysis says that there's going to be about 80,000 people who are going to have balances over $3 million at the moment who will be impacted by these changes. So we thought we'd give you some context, as I said, and I'm going to start first of all with you, Lucy. Why would someone want to accumulate more than $3 million inside their super fund?
Yeah, good question. So superannuation was introduced by the Australian government to really encourage us to self-fund retirement with a view to really ease the age pension burdens at the time, because I think that the population started living a lot longer. They had sort of said we can give you age pension at this certain age. People were living far longer than they expected, I think, and they don't want to pay for it. So what they said is what we're going to do to get Australians to do is really start to save for their own retirement, and we need to heavily incentivize this to make sure people do it. The way they really made that attractive and super attractive for people to move funds into superannuation was by doing a flat tax rate of 15% on the accumulation phase of superannuation, with the possibility to have up to a certain amount in a retirement phase of superannuation with a 0% tax rate. Now, as you know, this is like vastly different from the tiered marginal tax rates that we have outside of superannuation, where our top tax rate is around 47%. So there's a massive incentive there for particularly high income earners to move so much of their savings into the superannuation scheme, because there is a tax of 15% instead of that big marginal tax rate. So in answer to your question, Ellie, why would someone want to get $3 million into superannuation? There's a massive tax saving there for them, and the more the better. So what we're seeing now, the government's sort of turning around and proposing a bit of a change to this. They're saying, for people who've got more than $3 million in their superannuation, is this really for retirement, or are you starting to use this for reasons that you shouldn't be? So, I guess hoarding money or trying to reduce tax instead of using it for your retirement savings. So what they're suggesting is that they're going to double that tax rate. So on any balance over $3 million, double the tax rate to 30%, just so that there's, I guess, less incentive. But in saying that, when you compare 30% to our marginal tax rate, it's still a really strong incentive to move money into superannuation. So it's still one of the best options that we've got to reduce our tax on earnings. But for people who've got less than $3 million in superannuation, which is probably most of us, I don't know about you guys, but it's not going to change. So there'd be absolutely no changes to the tax rate.
Thanks, Lucy. So still a really attractive form of accumulation of wealth for people inside super at that 15% tax rate by the sounds of it.
Absolutely. Even at the 30%, it's still going to be a big one.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of analysis and data that's come out over the last couple of weeks around how much people do have in super. And SJ, we've heard that there's about 17 Australians who I'd love to know who they are, who've got more than $100 million inside super. But we know that it's actually sort of hard to get money into super. Can you actually contribute, that much to get $100 million inside super?
Yeah, that's a really great question. There's been lots of changes to getting money into super over the years as well. Since it was sort of compulsory from 1992, there were, a certain group of people, mainly public sector workers, that had access to that system before most of the rest of Australia. So they did have a longer period of time to try and get money in and be sort of invested in markets and have that really lovely growth that comes over time. But since the beginning of the compulsory system as well, the amounts you can get in each year have changed. And with new budgets, the government's always looking to tinker with these numbers. But about 9 years ago, I remember working on a plan specifically for a client, and we were able to get close to $1 million into super, just using, a few different types of contributions and putting them in over the June, July sort of financial year crossover period, just to use the system to the advantage of the client. But if you've had those things in the past and you've taken advantage of them, I can definitely see how you would be able to get a really decent balance within the super system. I know at the moment now, you know, that the government is lowering those amounts year on year and making it sort of a bit more restrictive to get money into the super system. But there's still great things that we can do for clients.
Yeah, absolutely. It really has changed a lot over time. I can recall a bit like you, SJ. I remember couriering a check to a super fund in Sydney just a couple of days before the 30th of June for $1 million at one stage. How things have changed over time. But it is also now the government sort of introducing that cap of the balance being above $3 million. It's not the first time they have introduced a cap, though. And Michael, if you can give us a bit of an idea on what has happened in the past with the pension account and the cap that they've introduced there.
Yeah, sure. So firstly, it's good to explain there's two types of superannuation accounts. There's your accumulation account, which you put contributions into or your employer does for you. And that's always been taxed at 15% on the earnings. Whereas you've also got your pension accounts where it's tax-free earnings, and that's where you draw money out of. So prior to 1 July 2017, all pension accounts paid no earnings tax, and there's also no limit on the amount that you could have in that pension phase. And then from 1 July 2017, they introduced a $1.6 million cap on how much you could have in that tax-free pension environment. It is indexed, so currently it's 1.7 million, and will keep going up. And you know, one of the contentious parts is actually this new $3 million cap isn't actually planned to be indexed, so there's a bit of a variance there. And the other rule from 2017, the other big change is transition to retirement pensions are no longer tax-free on earnings. So those pension rules are staying the same, but it does help illustrate that there's always tinkering both in the accumulation side of things and also the pension side.
So it sounds like there's been a lot of tinkering around the edges. Contribution caps have changed over time. Tax rates have slowly changed over time, but generally sort of speaking, for people who have a sort of standard balance in Australia, they haven't really been impacted too significantly. You know, if I think about the pension you're talking about, Michael, $1.7 million in a pension account, tax-free, sounds pretty good to me, and that's per person.
Yep.
So there's been a lot of tinkering around the edges over time, and I think it'd be fair to say that this is really an evolution then of further changes that are being made. But I guess my last question is for you, Lucy. There's lots of changes that's happened over time, but can you still access your super at the same time?
Yeah, you can. So one of the biggest things that they haven't changed really over the years is the ability to get that out when you retire. So yes, we've seen the retirement age kind of change in light of the aging population, but in terms of being able to access your superannuation, there are no changes being proposed. So
excellent. Well, hopefully this for our clients gives you a bit more context around what the changes are, what's occurring, a bit of an understanding of what's happened over time and the evolution that has occurred. We are going to be chatting about it with you, but if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us and to your advisor. Thank you, Lucy, Stevie J, and Michael for your time today, and hopefully for our clients, you've found this really valuable.